So now I'd like to share a bit about our action groups. Action groups are a new addition to our program slate this year. They are a follow-up to the Chicago Community Confab sessions. So in the weeks following each confab session, a neighborhood-specific action group will take the form of a virtual 2-hour brainstorming session where community stakeholders and invited alliance members will come together to dive deep into discussion and action planning that addresses identified community needs. We kicked off this series with an Englewood action group following the Englewood Confab at the start of the year and successfully brought together Alliance members and Englewood community stakeholders for a very productive session. Participants discovered the potential of partnering on a mobile book fair, a middle school service project, and a literacy training for teachers, parents, and volunteers. So I wanted to do something special this session and invite founder and executive director of the Neighbor to Neighbor Literacy Project, Nancy Wolken, to share a bit about her experience with our action groups and some collaborative projects that came out of her participation. So Nancy, give me 1 second to turn on your mic. You should be able to speak now if you want to test that out.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Awesome. I'm going to hand it over to you, Nancy. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing a bit today.
Sure, great. So thank you, Rocio. As she's mentioned, I am the founder and the director of Neighbor to Neighbor Literacy, and we're working to put little libraries in across the South and the West sides. And I am definitely proof that these action groups really do work, and they build connections and great collaboration opportunities between both CLA members themselves and within the communities that we're learning about. A couple of examples, the photos you're looking at on the left, because of the Englewood Action Group and my meeting of Michelle Rashad with Imagine Englewood, we got to work with them to put a little library in their community garden just about a week ago. And the photos on the right are the collaboration that came out of the action group with King's Academy and Principal Thurmond, also in Englewood, to work with students to assemble a little library. They're now decorating it, and I'm going to go back in the next week or so to install it with them and have a celebration. The other thing that's come out of the action groups is collaboration with other CLA members. Dwayne Davis and I, with my very own library, have developed a really great working relationship, and we're seeing all kinds of collaboration. Open Books and I are collaborating. I've worked with Deborah Evans and Chicago Lights to collaborate. And these conversations and the action groups are sparking new connections with all kinds of community members. So I definitely encourage everybody to get involved in the action groups, reach out to community members that you meet through these, and share with CLA members and keep this momentum going. I'm definitely a fan.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Nancy has been a complete rock star. All of our community stakeholders and members are always immediately like, yes, give us a little library. So we're really grateful, Nancy, to have your organization as a part of our network here at the CLA, and can't wait to see what other future collaborations come out of your work with us. But yeah, as Nancy shared, these are really great opportunities to connect not only with community stakeholders, which is, our primary focus, but also with other CLA members that you just may not be very familiar with. You might find that you have, mutually beneficial or aligning visions that you might be able to support each other with. So these action groups are a really great opportunity to start to dive into some of those collaborations. So if you would like to participate in Riverdale's action group session, please remember to fill out the Confab evaluation survey at the end of the session to apply. This is the only avenue for members to express their interest in participating, so it's very important that you fill out that form. Our Riverdale community is especially important in terms of CLA member collaboration, and Annie will share a bit more about why that is in just a few slides. Thank you so much, Nancy.
You're welcome, thanks.
So now I'm going to share an announcement from our members about upcoming opportunities. As a reminder, members are able to submit announcements for our confab each month. Just reach out to myself or Community Director Erin McCann to submit your announcement. I believe we have two announcements today. The Poetry Foundation offers a number of free online resources, including the upcoming Summer Poetry Teachers Institute. Full details and application can be found at poetryfoundation.org/teacher institute. And again, I will be sharing this presentation, so you'll have this to reference if you're interested. Our next announcement is from Literacy Chicago. You can join Literacy Chicago at its monthly literary happy hour, showcasing 5 great authors, including award-winning authors Lois Lowry, Vern Schumer Chapman, and Jason Chong. And I believe that Joanne will be dropping in a link to that session in the chat. Now I'm going to hand the session over to our Director of Strategic Initiatives, Annie Rizak, as she shares some helpful context for the Chicago Community Confabs and our exciting new Literacy Equity Initiative.
Thank you, Rocio. Good morning, everyone. I am so happy to be here with all of you. Thank you for joining us on this rainy Wednesday morning. I hope you have a cup of joe or whatever it is that you like to drink in the morning to get yourself cozy and settled in for this webinar. As Rocio said, I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives, and I'm really excited to be here with our friends from Riverdale. As you know, the Confab is our flagship program and is focused on alignment, collaboration, and innovation. So this year we're focusing our confabs on Chicago neighborhoods. If you've been to our previous confabs on Englewood and Washington Park, you know this already, but some of you may be new to this confab. So I'm going to just really quickly say why we shifted to focus specifically on neighborhoods. And so we believe in 100% literate Chicago. That's what we're working towards. So what that entails is that we no longer see literacy disparities based on neighborhoods, demographic groups, or socioeconomic status because of historic systems of oppression. We want to address the opportunity gap and the low barriers to literacy access. And to do that, we must work with communities and not see ourselves as delivering something to them. So we don't want this work to reinforce entrenched patterns of neighborhood segregation. We are one community, but we do want to get our direction from community leaders with deep awareness of the multiple strengths and assets within their particular communities. So we're hoping to increase your understanding of the needs, assets, opportunities, and aspirations of folks living and working in these communities in order to more effectively work together. So that's why our shift is on these communities. I want to take a quick moment now to talk about Riverdale and announce that it is one of our 2 focus communities for LEI Action. So LEI Action is a deep dive that takes our action group work to the next level. And so Riverdale is one of those communities, and the other community is Gage Park, which will be coming up in our session. I believe it's our next confab. What LEI Action is it is a new model for community literacy investment that utilizes a human-centered design approach to research and relationship building. And so the 3 core components of LEI Action that take this to the next level are: we will be working on facilitating connections between local leaders committed to the advancement of literacy, alliance members, and external partners to do deep work within the community. And so we'll be engaging in research around Riverdale's learning priorities and barriers from their own perspective. We're going to be launching that research by doing interviews with parents of 2nd to 8th graders to begin the process. And then we'll expand, and we'll be starting that within the next few weeks. With our facilitator for Riverdale for these interviews is Dreama Gorham, who is actually, I think, on the webinar and is the founder and director of Burst Into Books. And so we're really excited to be working with her. And then we'll be employing the principles of collective impact to co-design specific strategies that increase literacy within that community. So that is where we're headed next with this Riverdale work. So with that, I am actually going to turn this back over to Rocio to get us started on our Riverdale panel.
I have the great honor of introducing our speakers for today, who are all very incredible community champions in their area and have so much wisdom to share. So I'm excited to welcome them into this space. And I'm so honored by the time that they're sharing with us today. So I'm going to invite you all to go ahead and turn on your cameras. We're welcoming in today Dr. Lolita Cleveland, who is a resource coordinator at Youth Guidance, Dr. Chanzia Sorsby, who is a pediatrician at CCA Health, Susanna Levine, who is the Director of Education and Early Learning at BPI, which stands for Business and Professional People for the Public Interest, and also Stacy Stewart, who is a Network 13 Deputy Chief of Schools. Thank you all so much for your time. We're so excited to have you here.
I am so excited. Thank you, Rocio, and welcome everyone. And for those of you who have attended our confabs in the past, just one quick word of newness is that Rocio and I are actually going to be tag teaming on the panel facilitation, which is new and exciting, and I am thrilled about it. So, but I'm going to kick us off, and we can go ahead and take down our panel slide so we can see everyone's faces all at once. Oh, that's beautiful. I welcome all of you to this conversation, and I will be directing specific questions and keep us moving. But if you want to jump in or respond to something somebody else said, please treat this as a dialogue. But I want to get us started, set the tone with a quick round the horn of everyone having an opportunity to describe the Riverdale community in 1-2 words, a short phrase. How would you describe the Riverdale community in a very short phrase? All right, so I am actually going to just call on you from where you are on my screen in order. So I'm going to start with Dr. Sorsby. How would you describe Riverdale?
Hi, I would describe it as full of potential.
Full of potential. Okay, love that. Susanna, you're next.
I would describe it as a community full of motivated and committed families.
Motivated and committed families. Thank you. Dr. Cleveland.
Very resourceful, yet unified and divided.
Resourceful, unified, and divided. Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. We're going to come back to that. All right. Deputy Chief Stewart.
I would say challenge, but resilient.
Challenged and resilient. Y'all just selected some really strong words. I can't wait to unpack these words and learn more about your community. So before we get into what each of you do, which we will get into and understand why you're here as representatives from the Riverdale Altgeld community, but tell us a little bit, and this goes to everyone, and you all don't have to answer, but we just want to get a sense of what you know about the history of Riverdale. So if you have any points of context or any historical anchor point that we should kind of know about to anchor our understanding of the community, we'd love to hear it.
Well, I can tell you what I know, which is that, well, first of all, the Riverdale community is home to CHA's largest traditional public housing development, Altgeld Gardens, and it also includes 4 surrounding community housing developments as well. And so the total population for Riverdale is, I think, about 7,500. And Altgeld Gardens itself was originally developed as housing for returning World War II African-American vets. So that's what Altgeld was originally. The community originally also was, there was a lot of manufacturing around Altgeld. And so it was a place for returning vets to come and live. And there was a lot of job opportunity there. That has changed quite a bit, obviously, since over the last, decades. And now I'll just mention that Altgeld it's a very isolated community. It's very unique in that way. There are physical barriers on all sides of the community. The Bishop Ford Freeway is on one side, the Little Calumet River runs around 2 sides, and then there's Water Reclamation District land to the north. So there are literally physical barriers surrounding the community. and it remains underserved in many important ways. There's basically no retail anymore. There's only one CTA bus line that runs through Riverdale and through Altgeld, and it's 49 stops away from the end of from 95th Street Red Line stop. So it's even get to get to the end of the line at the red line, it's 49 stops away. Altgeld Riverdale has the highest poverty rate in the city of Chicago, and it has the highest child poverty rate in the city of Chicago. I think the poverty rate is like a little over 60% right now, compared to about 20% for the city of Chicago.
And
And
Susanna, I want you to keep going with these facts, but I just wanted to jump in there with that's one of the reasons that Riverdale was selected as one of our communities, because that the stats that you're citing also directly correlate with literacy attainment. So yeah, I want you to keep going, but also Rocio, this might be a good time for you to pull up the map.
Yeah.
We have a map that you share with us, so let's pull that up, and then you can continue on with some of these really interesting points, data points. Go ahead.
sure. So I was just also going to show that the median household income is a little over $13,000 compared to $52,000 for the city. The unemployment rate is about 35% compared to about 10% for the city. But what's very significant about the community, and which is why BPI has a presence in the community, is that it's a very young community. A full quarter of the population of Riverdale is under the age of 9. So there are lots of young kids in the community. So a lot of needs around early learning and early childhood.
That is incredibly helpful. And you can see here, the map is not the clearest. It's not coming up the clearest, but you can get a sense of where the borders are and the highway, and where the Altgeld Gardens public housing is. So that's great. Anyone else on the panel want to add anything to what Susanna just gave us context for?
I will also add to that environmentally, it's very challenged. Over the years, there's been several studies and cases around cancer, asthma, and the health issues that are there. I know that one of the largest organizations, which is the Community for People Environmental, which is led now by Cheryl Johnson, her mother went all the way to the federal government to make sure that Altgeld Riverdale was not overlooked about the environmental issues that it experienced from the water, from the manufacturing chemicals that was occurring in the area. That's a really big part. Environment also plays a part in literacy. You know, because it's a lot to the environment. You know, it used to be a dumpster over there. There's still some landfill areas within that actual community that affects them, and it affects their health.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such an important point. Thank you. All right, we can go ahead and drop that slide, Rocio. Thank you so much for putting that up. We will have more opportunity to share some of these insights as each of you bring your thoughts and ideas to the panel. I want to just go around and give you each an opportunity to say what your role is and why you're here on behalf of the Riverdale community. So I'm going to start now to my right with which is Deputy Chief Stewart. Welcome.
Hey, welcome. Good morning. And so I'm Stacy Stewart. I'm the Deputy Chief of Network 13 that oversees all of the schools on the far south side, including the schools in the Altgeld Riverdale community, which are Du Bois Elementary in Riverdale and Carver Elementary and Aldridge Elementary and Altgeld Gardens. And so one of the things that I'm really excited about today is just shining a light on the positive leaders that we have in all 3 of those schools, but the huge challenges that they're having during this hybrid setting where out of all of our schools in the network, they have the lowest student attendance of all of the schools in Network 13. And so when you think about kids not having access to the educational system and the environment that will help make that happen. It also shows the sense of urgency in terms of students not having access to early childhood learning, students not having access to kindergarten readiness. And schools are really working hard, with, Metropolitan, with youth outreach, with various vendors to actually bring more parents and get them more engaged, to bring children, especially our most vulnerable students, back into the buildings. But it definitely is a continued challenge that they are steadily making progress with.
Thank you so much. And we're actually in this panel going to dive a little deeper into how our member network can assist with some of that parent engagement and some of those challenges that you're working on. We want to hear more about those initiatives. So let's go to Dr. Cleveland.
I am Dr. Cleveland, Youth Guidance Resource Coordinator. I also serve as the 3 elementary schools in the Oakdale Riverdale community as deputy steward. So I service all 3 of those elementary schools in providing after-school enrichment, in-school supports to the principals that are at those schools. We help with parent engagement and cultural involvement for them to be able to participate. I represent from the kids from an after school perspective. However, youth guidance is into the whole family. So we holistically helps the family. So what I did that I found is really great, especially starting at Aldrich, is building those relationships with those parents and really being able to do it. And what I would really like to see is that the wealth of resources, a wealth of resources in the Oakdale Riverdale community, to really see the importance of parent involvement, parent engagement, and addressing the parent need. Because we don't address the parent, we can't get the kid. So we definitely need to address that, what that stands for, what's needed, and their perspective on education. Because if their perspective of education is not seen, then how are they going to understand and support literacy? If mom only graduated from 8th grade, she may not understand that. So just making sure that we're fully educated. We can bring all of the resources to the community. We can bring all of the connection to the community. But if all of the agencies don't understand the need of reaching the totality of the parent and the family, we're just still pulling out our teeth. So that's where I'm at. Good morning.
Good morning. And tell us what the kiddos don't call you, Dr. Cleveland.
Oh, I'm Miss Lolita. It's
Miss Lolita, which I love.
Yeah, I'm known it. Yeah, you say Dr. Cleveland, they like, who? Yeah, Miss Lolita. I've been that since I've been there, and I won't change it.
It's wonderful. All right, Susanna, welcome.
Thanks. So I work for an organization called BPI, which stands for, it's a terribly long name, Business and Professional People for the Public Interest. It's the worst. And we used to be called businessmen for the public interest. So at least we've improved a little bit in that way. We are a public interest law and policy center focused on a variety of social justice issues, including an effort to reduce inequalities and inequities in early learning. So we've been engaged since 2012 in an effort to build a community-powered system of support for young kids and their families, with a goal of trying to ensure that every kid is on track to succeed by 3rd grade. We coordinate the Oakdale Riverdale Early Learning Coalition, which is a community-wide effort that involves everybody on this screen from the community. We bring together each month all the major stakeholders who touch the lives of young kids in the community. So everyone you see here, the schools, the centers, TCA Health, Youth Guidance, the social service providers, the library, the park district, everybody. And we've tried to create an opportunity for folks to collaborate and share information, professional development around best practices in early childhood, and just an opportunity to problem solve in the community together.
Fantastic, thank you. And we'll get to more details about the coalition and some of the work going on. Last but not least, Dr. Sorsby, you have your mask on. We know that you are in your clinic.
I do, but somebody just walked up, so.
Oh, good, good.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Sorsby. I'm a pediatrician at TCA Health. And I am a firm believer in just building that strong foundation of early literacy. And the way that I do that through the clinic is with the Reach Out and Read program. Many of you may be familiar with that program, but what it does, it provides the opportunity for allowing children to have developmentally appropriate or culturally appropriate books at every well child visit. So starting from 6 months to 5 years of age, at every well child visit, I provide a book. And then I speak with parents about the importance of reading to their child. Strengthens the parent-child relationship. It builds that cognitive development. It just improves their literacy skills now and in the future. And so the idea is that by the time they enter kindergarten, they'll have their own little library of about 9 to 10 books. The disparity starts at home because you have a lot of children in low-income neighborhoods and low-income families who don't have access to books. And this is just my small way of trying to bridge that gap, to bridge that disparity by providing books in the home. And like Ms. Lolita says, it is also important that we address the parents. There is no silver bullet, no one way to improve early literacy. It's going to take a broad portfolio of investment into their students' health, environmental factors, food security, family, community. It's very important for healthy kids to make healthy students. So it takes a broad approach. But providing books in the homes is just one small way of bridging that gap.
Thank you. You all really are such amazing leaders and champions in your community for things well beyond foundational literacy. And so we're going to dig into a few of these areas, but I want to start with Dr. Cleveland. You said that the Riverdale community is unified and divided. I wonder if you could expand on that just a little bit for us.
Sure. The community has been around for ages, years, generations. It's multi-generational. There's some families that have been there for 4 and 5 generational in the housing authority. And the culture has been over the years that those who have decided to move up or have growth or what have you, they move to the Golden Gate side of Riverdale. And that was supposed to have been the cream of the crop, so to speak. So a lot of times it's very culturally divided with tension. There have definitely been incidents that have occurred.
Are you saying like the haves and the have-nots within the community?
Yes, thank you. You helped me with that. Yes, the haves or the have-nots, the George Jeffersons moving on up. And that has caused some cultural division over the years. And now that those type of seeds have been sown into the ground and the culture of the community, now you have new families that are coming in and being addressed, and then they're bought into that culture, which is an issue because we're all trying to work together for the best interest of the community. A small example would be early on in my arriving to Ottgale, there was quite a lot of divisions with organizations, and I'm the new girl in the organization on the block, and I'm trying to serve the community. I really don't care what your issue was that you had 35 years ago. I have a baby that need food. I have a baby that needs pre-K. So I need to find a Susanna to say, hey, well, what is it that you offer to the school? Okay, let me talk to my principal. I'm trying to service people. And I think that sometimes it's divided even in organizations and agencies that are in the community. And unfortunately, because they're getting certain funding or certain grants, sometimes it's about meeting the deliverables, and we miss the need in the community of who we actually service. So that's that. We're unified because we'll come together. We'll come to a coalition meeting. We're gonna come and help with this panel today. We're gonna come together, but somewhere in there, there's a missing component that
Mm.
causes division. Not sure if it's grant funding or just the
Mm.
agency's hands are tied because of who they're connected to culturally in the community. And then conversation, our words can be so deadly. The power of words, they can be
Yeah.
very deadly. So
So
we have to be
oh,
careful
go
how
ahead.
we have to be careful how we address one another as as leaders in organizations, and
Mm.
that can go into a whole nother social emotional topic that we don't need to talk about today.
Well, but very interesting. And let's put a pin on that in case we have an opportunity to get back to it. But I see a lot of nods. Is there anything anybody wanted to add to that, or did Dr. Cleveland sum it up? Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. I want to shift a little bit to talking about resources. And so I know you all have different things to say about this, but Deputy Stewart, let's talk with you about resources in the school. So we've had some conversations in this group that the Riverdale Elko community is flush with resources because there's a lot of social services and different available resources because of addressing the gaps. And then there's also a lack of services and a lack of resources in other ways. And I'm wondering from your perspective, what that looks like in the school, equitable distribution of resources in specifically in the 3 schools that you oversee in the Riverdale community.
So I think that's a great question. That's something we're still digging into to uncover. What we're noticing is that within this opportunity gap, there's an attitude gap. And I think Dr. Cleveland kind of alluded to some of that, where we're losing in some way through this pandemic, the importance of education or the importance of accessing in-person learning.
Mm.
And so what we see that's happening is that the schools have, they've gotten grants, they've gotten additional resources, through different organizations to re-engage communities. But then there's another part of it that I think that the schools really would benefit from that deals with the human connection. Like, how do we change the narrative of what it means to be a student at Carver? So Carver, for example, has had multiple leaders within the last 6 years. I think they maybe had 5 or 6 principals during that time. You have Du Bois that's in another area, and there's a certain mindset and mentality that's associated with being a student at Du Bois that resonates throughout the community from what we're seeing. And then we have Aldridge. And so Aldridge is on the come up. They've done a lot of, turnaround things there. And so with all 3 schools, with dynamic leaders at all 3, great parents, but it's this underlying thing that seems to be permeated about if I am to get, say, for example, an EBT, then I don't need to bring my kids to school every day of the week. Or if I am, off on a certain day and one child is not able to come, then let's just keep everybody at home. And so when did it get to be this thing where, we're gaming or making decisions about when education is important? But in many of our situations, if you're going to a preschool classroom, say at Du Bois, you might see 3 kids in person. But you just mentioned how many children we have in the community that are not even accessing preschool. Right. So how do we help parents understand the importance of, we don't want to shame or blame. We want to enlighten. We need to engage on a different level. So back to the restrictions of organizations. If I'm a principal, say at Carver, and only 70% of my kids are coming every day, how do I get those other 30% when my staffing is limited? Yeah. So an organization may say, I want to do gift cards to let parents come to a focus group. But as a principal, that's not going to meet my need. I need a walk-in school bus where you give them a gift card to bring those babies, you, your neighbors, your auntie, your cousins, your nephews, your nieces, and their nephews and nieces, and walk them babies to school. And then when they get to the building, now you can have a conversation. I'm glad to see you. Thank you. We're a valued member of this, school. We can't do it without you. But so you get caught up in these limitations, if I can say, with what you wrote a grant for, but the grant was never intended for a pandemic. So I want people to understand that what we're living in and what principals and school leaders are charged with was nothing that any of us prepared for. So we have to be able to deviate from the script and give our community the resources that they need, human resources, along with those physical as well. So I just think that's something, there's no rebranding. If I go by Du Bois, you see banners, you see all these things. If I go to Aldrich, you'll see mosaics and beauty on the affixed to the building. If you go to Carver, you see the building. What does that say?
Yeah.
What message are we actually giving? So I think it's a little bit more to it that those schools are going to need support with. We have to change the messaging. We have to change the branding. We have to make this a place of sanctuary, which they are. But
it's getting that message out and letting
we have to get
people
it out.
Experience it.
Right, because there's still this notion that those are not schools of choice. They are schools of last resort. And we have to change that mentality as a community.
That is an incredibly helpful perspective. Susanna and Dr. Sorsby, I'm wondering what your experience in the community is with how the community is impacted by equitable resources. And from what Deputy Chief Stewart just said, how that may have been even shifted further through the pandemic.
So I know that Susanna and I, we've worked together just to increase the parents' awareness of what resources are available for early learning. With her help, I provide our parents with information about schools in the area and who they can contact for more information regarding those schools and how to sign their children up as early as three years old for just early learning. But I feel like during the pandemic, that interest has been curbed. And a lot of the parents are now more concerned about their children being in school in person because of the pandemic. Okay. So they'll opt for a family member to keep that child rather than sign them up for school.
I think Deputy Stewart said that so well. I agree 100% with everything you said, and you too, Dr. Sorsby. I think this pandemic has just completely, it's like pulled the rug out from under us all. And, you can absolutely understand all the reasons why people are scared to send kids to school, but it's making the opportunity gap that already existed that much bigger. And we saw, I think, like a 44% decrease in pre-K enrollment last year. So we're, this is kind of an all hands on deck situation in our efforts to get kids enrolled for the upcoming year.
And I just want to add to that, what's made this worse is that there is the notion that school is not the safest and best place for the children to be. And so my colleagues in Wildwood on the far north side, they have 80% of their children in the building. Why is it that it's safe for that community to have children in person, to have early childhood programming and all that? But then when you get and on the far south in Alga Riverdale, why is it that our schools are not safe? They're using the same.
Do you have a sense of, does anyone have a sense of why that is?
It's the messaging, and that's what I'm saying. We have to change that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Cleveland.
Deputy Stewart got me stirred. It's unfortunate. Three things. I agree 100% with Deputy Stewart. One, the pandemic has made us have to become flexible and adaptable in addressing that human contact. Flexible and adaptable I know for me, it was the wellness checks. I'm not recruiting you for virtual after school. I went with no after school kids. But Miss Jane Doe, how are you? How are you and the kids? There were some principals we were knocking doors, homes visits, telephone calls. I even got a link to be able to text parents. And then sometime that got over inundated. So you had to sort of fall back a week and then come back at it. But it also showed the heart of our education system, which goes to the messages that Deputy Stewart is talking about. You know, there are leaders that are out there for the kids. So why is it that you don't think that those leaders that are in place are for your kids? And unfortunately, again, Deputy Stewart said attitude, and it goes to cultural, the perspective, what's being said, what's being done, and that power of that mouth in a community, chit chatting. I'm going to call it what it is today. Instead of coming to a LSC meeting, showing up to a PAC meeting, meeting the new principal, meeting the new people in leadership that can help you. That's not all parents, but there's a great number who need that, because you don't know. You're just going off of what you heard from what your neighbor told you from block 10 to block 3 to block 5. And those who may not know this on the webinar, our Gale Gardens is broken down into blocks. Okay, so that's what I mean by
Gotcha.
block 1, block 3, you know.
And how many
So,
blocks are there?
I think that there are 17. Let me think about it.
Okay, but
And I'm
somewhere in
saying
that
17 because
range.
17 is across from Aldrich. Yes.
Mhm.
So I think that it's needed, and I think too that the agencies that are partnering with the schools, they have to talk to. I'm in the school, so it's a little different from me. I meet with my principals on a regular. What's your mission? What's your vision? What are you looking to do? And then I can come back to them and say, you know what, this is how youth guidance can help. Or, you know, you have this grant on this pot of money that could probably help you extend that. So for me, it's a bit more tangible because I'm with those leaders that are rolling up their sleeves every day. I've been with the school that has had multiple leaders because I've had to work with them all. So I think we definitely have to be flexible and adaptable in this pandemic, post-pandemic, and really unify. I am about unity. So anybody that works with us, I'm about unity. That's how we've started the community events with By the Hands in the Argyle Riverdale community. I just called up the leader and I said, look, I need to be able to reach the community.
Can you
need to
give
be able to reach.
our network a little more context on who By the Hand is?
By the Hands is a faith-based organization within Argyle Riverdale. They also provide after-school programming. They're geared towards really supporting parents who may get off work late, because my after-school program at certain schools ends at 5:36. I do believe they go to 7 o'clock. They also bus kids. I don't particularly bus them unless it's summer months, and we have,
And they host
you
a
know,
lot of events, right? Like
so
public.
they do a lot of events, but we have partnered since the pandemic to service the community. Yeah, since the community, we've been able to plug, because some organizations could not service the community because of grant requirements. They're limited to what they can do. Youth guidance and By the Hands were not as limited. We came together. Let's feed the community. Let's get the community the resources. Let's partner with TCA so that they can do COVID testing. We knew the COVID system. I worked with someone there. So it was about combining the resources, bringing them all in one neutral place that everybody could actually get to.
So Dr. Sorsby, I know you have your mask back on, but we'll listen really carefully to your words, because I'm wondering if you can give us just a little bit more context from your point of view, working in a healthcare setting, what the perceived value is of literacy in terms of a developmental milestone. Is that something that that parents are even thinking about?
It is not something that parents are thinking about until there's an obvious speech delay. when we do the developmental screenings at every visit, there'll be all check marks for motor development. Sure, he can kick a ball, climb, cheers, jump, hop, skip. But is he or she saying 2 words? Are they putting 2 or 3 words together? Are they making sentences? Are they, that the speech development? And parents may not express concern for that until it is quite obvious. They won't pick up on the smaller delays. But if there's an obvious delay, then that's when they express those concerns. But if that child is otherwise doing well and interacting with kids, then there's no concern. And it's only something that I then pick up after having them fill out a questionnaire. And then there'll still be, let's say I refer them to early intervention, there'll still be some parents that express some hesitancy about early intervention. I don't know if it's a negative stigma that they feel like my child should not be going to early intervention, but then they say, oh, but he's developing fine. That literacy component doesn't usually click until further conversation and education.
That's helpful because we talked a bit about, in this group about the culture of reading and literacy within the home. And I'm wondering if, I don't remember who it was, Susanna, was it you or Dr. Cleveland, who talked about efforts in that area of building a culture around literacy in the home, especially in early childhood, how our network might be able to assist with that. And then I want to transition this conversation with how that can then bridge into the school, right? How that can be a strong foundation for the value of the school education. But I'm wondering.
I think it's absolutely important for us to encourage that literacy development in the home. A lot of the parents and the interaction that I see between parent and child is of that screen. They give them the screen, they give them the tablet, they give them the phone to engage them, to keep them occupied. But when it comes to books and literacy engagement, I don't see as much of that as I would like. And I try to educate parents that when you give that child that tablet or that computer, it is very passive engagement. They are not actively engaged in that. They are not forced to comprehend and then respond to what they're then seeing. But if you give them a book, if you read to them, point to pictures, ask them about colors and the animals that they may see, communicate with them and have that connection, it goes so much further. And so when Ms. Lolita was mentioning it's important for us to target the parents' ability to engage with their children, that's absolutely important, because there may be some hesitancy to do so if they too struggle with reading.
That's really, really important. And I'm wondering if any of you have any thoughts on how to encourage that, because we know that some of the reasons that's not happening is, I think Dr. Cleveland, you mentioned the stigma and the shame that parents have around their own literacy levels, right? And that, reading isn't important for me, so it's not going to be important in my household. And that's, wondering if any of you have ideas of how our member network might be able to support that, building that culture.
And I know we talked before, one of my biggest things, and I know I will stand with a couple of principals in Ottgale, Riverdale. A GED program has been needed for a while. I do believe that there was another agency, it probably was the Family Works Agency in the community that was working with people for GEDs. But it would be really, really good if city colleges could come together at some point and really have GED programs and have it offered to the community, because believe it or not, we've had parents, and I know I can attest for a couple of principals that have asked us about GED programs. There's been some division to why city colleges won't come. That's unimportant on the panel today, but that's one thing that will work really, really good. And then I always say that I encourage children. So there used to be a reading, and I don't know now, but it used to be if you read so many books, you got your free pizza at Pizza Hut. I think we were talking about examples like that, right? Kids are really excited about that incentive. And I do know that at Carver and Aldrich, I launched a program like that before to sort of encourage the literacy at home. And I know that the local library used to do the literacy kits where it used to
I
be the
believe they
book and
still do the grab
yeah,
and
it
goes.
used to be the book, and then we were doing the arts. So you had to draw the pictures of the arts or whatever from the book. And if you bought it back, you entered to win a prize, something like that. But just creative things to encourage the kids to do it. Because guess what the kids gonna do? Mommy, daddy, I need my pizza from Pizza Hut, right? They're gonna get on their nerves. So that's gonna encourage the parents to go ahead. Well, what you need, what we need to do, how we need to do it. And when they don't know, they call the school. My baby got some kind of what I need to do.
Um, I want to ask like 70,000 follow-up questions, but I am going to toss this to my partner, Rocio, to continue facilitation so that we can really dig into the initiatives that are happening in Network 13 and the BPI Early Childhood Learning Coalition and find out a little bit more about the work you're doing and where you need help. So Rocio, take it away.
Yeah, so before we dive into some of the specific projects that we can, come alongside you and help with, we'd love to hear a bit more about, obviously coalition building and collaborative partnerships are a big part of your work in Riverdale and a big part of what's furthered your work. Dr. Cleveland, you talked a lot about your partnership with By the Hand. Susanna, I know you have that coalition that meets monthly. So we'd love to learn a bit more about how do you build trust within those partnerships, and especially thinking about, looking into the future and how the CLA membership might be able to help and plug into your work. How can, what are some best practices for us in building trust with, members of the Riverdale community? What are some of those strategies there?
I'll just mention, I think one thing that's important to remember, again, that is a little unique about Altgeld Riverdale, is that because it is this very particular kind of isolated community, it's been a very frequently studied community in a lot of ways. There have been a lot of universities and organizations who've come in and done all kinds of research. And so I think that there can be a feeling of distaste or disdain for organizations who folks feel like are kind of parachuting in, doing their thing, and then leaving. So I think it's, you can't, building trust just takes time, and that's all there is to it. There's no shortcut through that. And so I think it's just important for folks to remember that if you want, successful partnerships are a long-term commitment and they take time. And that's kind of what it boils down to, I think.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that's a huge part of our, literacy equity initiative moving forward is, making sure our membership knows and understands that, Riverdale being one of our 2 selected communities is we are in it for the long haul. We are, this is very much a community that we are focused on investing intentional time in. So we're looking for partners who, are committed to that sort of work. And I think we've heard from a few of you that one of the barriers to that has been that a lot of service providers don't come to the Riverdale area because of its distance. Is that the case? And can you, say a little bit more about that? I can see Dr. Cleveland got something to say about that.
Well, I'm going to speak about vendors. So Youth Guidance is a vendor that provides Chicago Public Schools with out of school time enrichments, whether that's through mentorship. But we have to subcontract sometime to get a dance class or a ballet class or something. And I've been in Gale Riverdale for 6 years, and I have had vendors who don't want to come that far south to the city. And if they do, they want to charge me $250 an hour to teach a ballet class. So then partnerships become important, especially with the Chicago Park District. He rocks, the Carver Park rocks. Where we can then try to, partner to get the kids those particular programs. And of course, you need to be able to have a skill set to say, this is for the kids. So you're not a, CPS vendor. You need to get an opportunity to do it. And that has worked. But believe it or not, I've had plenty of people who do not want to come far south. We've even partnered with some very big name organizations. I see somebody in the chat suggesting volunteers. Sometimes volunteers stop at 111. Sometimes they stop at 119. They consider the Oakdale River. They don't realize that Riverdale have a city side and a suburban side. So a lot of times they hear the name Riverdale, they think it's a south suburb, but it's a south suburb and a Chicago. It's dividing line is the city and the suburban side. So it has been some challenges for people to come and provide our kids the opportunity to be afforded enrichment programs.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, that's clearly a huge part of the resource gap, right? Is that
Mhm.
Riverdale in a lot of ways, and something that you've all mentioned is that it's kind of like the forgotten neighborhood. That a lot of people aren't, coming out to provide those services or those resources, and that is leaving a huge gap. So there is obviously a really great need. So, as we're talking about partnerships that are needed, I'd love to hear more from, Deputy Stewart, about some of what we're anticipating in the summer, some programs that you're hoping to get off the ground, specifically ways that you think our network might be able to plug into the work that you're doing. What do you all have planned for the next few months in the summer and then going into the fall?
Yeah, so I think one thing that we are planning, and with this coalition's help, we've already started working on summer outreach because we know that next year begins now, and we can't wait or rest on our laurels and say, well, let's invite people to a Zoom meeting, because our families, that's not their best mode of interaction electronically. They're tired of it. And so we're working to do some community outreach starting June 5th with Dr. Cleveland and By the Hand and several organizations to kind of just, make more of a presence, to educate parents about early childhood opportunities, back to school opportunities, but also provide resources. So if this organization can, one, let's change the narrative about access. So if I'm someone that's valued as a child or as a parent of a young child, what types of rich resources am I going to have to support my child in their development? So, our parents like toys and things like that and new things. Nobody wants books that are 50 years old that don't look like them. So if you could provide culturally relevant reading materials and activities, journals, those types of things that will make our children and our parents feel good about, having literacy that reflects who they are. We've done that personally with my organization, Delta Sigma Theta. We actually did a book caravan to Du Bois last month, where we raised about 3,000 books, culturally relevant books for children to have in the community. And so kids, we have pictures of kids excited about books. Even the local police district came by. There's a person that, a counselor at Carver, whose son wrote a children's book called, it's in my office, C is for Champions. And in that particular book, he's talking about his experience as a young person on the World Series winning Jackie Robinson Little League team. So how do our kids see themselves in literature? How do we make that more present? So yes, you can feed them. You can feed them physically, but how are you nourishing them educationally? So think about, how can you provide, I don't want 5-year-old books. I don't mean any disrespect, but how do you give our kids some beautiful books that look like them, that will make them want to pick it up and read, even play with the book? So that's something that we're looking into, and we're fortunate to partner with Nancy to actually provide little libraries. The first one is going to be launched at Du Bois this week, hopefully. But we're going to have little libraries in all of the schools in the Altgeld Riverdale community, and activities to really bring communities together around literacy. So one thing that I think this group could help with is, how do we make literacy and education public practice? So what would it look like if we had, the book, the outdoor libraries, and we're reading outside and we're having events tied to literacy, whether it be the literacy trail, that we talked about earlier in another focus group, but even incorporating public art with literacy. So if you go by Carver, there's no public art there whatsoever. What would it look like if we had literacy events that were tied to some type of public art that was affixed to the school, that the residents, the children, and the parents are doing alongside together? Having that at Du Bois, having more of that at Aldridge. And so thinking about, like, you have to see yourself in the change that you desire for your community. And how might we provide that space to bring everyone together? And so that's what we're going to be doing. We're purchasing some outdoor tents at the network, because there's no way we're going to be engaged in this office. It's just not going to work. So Dr. Cleveland, Miss Lolita, you'll be seeing me soon. But we're doing, like Juneteenth events at Aldridge, and so we're planning something for every month for between now and the beginning of school at the end of August. We also have to be mindful of the fact that this is the first time that the kids are coming back a week early. So we've lost thousands of children in the district. We've lost 1,000 in Network 13 alone. And so we know that if we're not intentional about our communication, and also about how we're messaging that the best place for children to be is in a school, and we have great schools in the Alga Riverdale community, they will not come back. They'll stay at home. They will connect or not connect. And we have a huge problem in terms of educational access. So if anybody has suggestions of how we can bring them more out, I want to have, community events that bring people together with the resources that they need to meet those, needs that are present. But we also want to have ways to enjoy, because we know the impact of adverse childhood experiences are great. And so if their ACE score wasn't high before the pandemic, imagine what it is now. And many parents are also dealing with trauma, and staff are dealing with secondary trauma. So all of these people we need to pour back into and make them whole. And that would really help heal and begin that process to engage our community more.
Yeah, thanks. And I mean, I was at your last Network 13 organizing meeting, and I can see that people are hungry. People are really motivated, to really do these monthly events, and there's a lot of opportunity for action and collaboration. So we're excited to see how we can come alongside y'all and support. But I'd love to hear from the rest of you, about what your priorities are for the next few months, in the summer, in the fall. Just share a little bit about that. And again, we can continue just to think about and brainstorm how we might be able to plug into some of your priorities.
Well, I can tell you that
my priority. Go ahead. No, I was just going to say my priority is to bring children into the clinic and have those wellness checks, those wellness visits. Ask parents how they're doing. What is it that you need? How have you been managing this pandemic? Because we've lost a lot of patients, a lot of children who have not been coming into their clinic for their wellness visits. So my priority is just to bring them back into the clinic and re-engage them, and to encourage access to early childhood education with signing up for school in fall.
Yeah, I remember, Dr. Shoresby, in our previous conversations, you mentioned potentially doing like a story time, at the clinic with kids, and just different ways to help to bring families out and to engage them. That'll help with some of that attendance. Yeah,
absolutely. When I first started this Reach Out and Read program here at the clinic, that was definitely something that I wanted to do, have volunteer readers, where while patients were waiting for their visit, there would be somebody reading a story or having a story time for them, or having just a section of the clinic where there's a little library with books for them to access while they wait, and for books that they may be able to take home. So that's definitely something that I'm still interested in doing.
Awesome. Thank you. Susanna?
I was just going to say, I think one thing that would be really helpful, and and it's something we've talked about. And actually, I think the coalition, this is something that we wanted to look into and think about and then the pandemic hit, and we really couldn't do too much outside. But I really think that a community-wide public education campaign around the importance of early literacy, early learning would be fantastic. I think, I don't know how much people know that 80% of the brain develops by the age of 3, that your brain architecture, as a baby, those synapses are snapping away, and there's so much that happens while kids are young. And I just don't know how much people know that. So I think that could really go a long way in making people recognize how important early learning is.
Yeah, definitely. And I think along that line too, we have a member in our network, a couple that specialize in clear language, and how do you, Katie, actually on this call, our ASL interpreter is a part of that organization at Literacy Works, in terms of like the value of communicating these things clearly, to audiences, not filling it with a bunch of jargon, but making it easy to grasp and easy to understand. And I think that's a really big part of advocacy campaigns. So definitely focusing on that and thinking about that in the future. Thank you so much for sharing, Dr. Cleveland. What do you have on deck for the next few months?
June 5th has me very busy.
Tell us a bit about that event.
So yes, so June 5th came out of last year, during the pandemic. One of my partners, a vendor that provides programming, said to me that they wanted to take up an offering. Long story short, they went to someone's home in Ideal Garden. It was a senior citizen, and they had molded food in their refrigerator. And I had never seen a grown man at 40 weep. His heart was hurting. That's the human connection that Deputy Stewart is talking about. And he goes, we got to give out food. And I'm like, I'm not giving out no food. I'm like, I don't even. So one thing led to the next. I had the idea, and I knew that a few other places may have been constricted by guidelines. So I called by the hands. The church don't have restrictions. And they said, let's do it. I said, let's do it. So we did one in June. We turned around and did back to school last year. And then this year, I have to do something for the kids for Carver and Aldrich. They live in Ottgale, so why not blend it all together and do one big community event June 5th, and then we'll do back to school August 21st. So we're already ready for that. I've begged the principal in Ottgale to let me use a gym again this year to be able to house book bags, because I typically give out about 300 book bags to the community. It's a start. It's not the be all end all, but it's a start. And they come with supplies already. So that's a good thing. And I'm excited. I am looking to do for literacy for the new year is to do a monthly author series. I am looking for authors of kids' books that will come in and be able to read to the students. When I ask for one school, I ask for all 3 of my schools. We are a package deal. If you servicing, you working with me, you gonna service all of my principals at all 3 schools.
Right.
So I don't know how we're rotating it, but I have started. I do have a book that I'm gonna launch with, and it's about Abigail, and it's a primary book, Susanna. I'm starting with primary. My background is primary, so okay. I'm starting, it's Abigail and how Abigail adjusts to being a new kid in the school and some other things. African-American author. And I'm asking her to go to all 3 schools. She has agreed. So I'm looking to try to get a September schedule and just look for any author that is willing to come in and volunteer. We are a nonprofit CPS and youth guidance. So you can write it off on your taxes. So anybody that you know, have them contact Dr. Cleveland. We'll make sure you get it tax deductible because we can't pay you to do it. I need you to have a human connection to want to really see literacy in the hands of the kids. I may can buy a book per class or something, but that's what I'm looking to do, an author series where they can see an actual person who wrote the book for that and to encourage literacy. Aldrich just had they had the Eagles Arise Boys and Girls Conference in May, and there was 3 authors, and all of the boys that attended Saturday was able to get a signed autographed copy of the books, that was there. So that's my contribution to try to get literacy going for this year.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, and we're excited for that June 5th event. To the members on the call, CLA will be at that event. We're excited to see you all in person after
Right.
tuning in so much online. But for any members, who have been listening in, our interest is piqued. You want to get to know the area a bit. You want to meet some of the lovely ladies on this call. Definitely welcome you to reach out to Annie or myself, and we can coordinate a little group
Attend the
real quick.
action group.
Yeah, exactly. So we're excited for that. I think, this has been really incredible in giving tangible ways, very tangible ways that the CLA network can plug in and collaborate alongside you all. And that's always what we're looking for, trying to find these tangible different opportunities for our network. So I think this is a really great place to transition into our Q&A. So we're going to give you all a breather for a few minutes. I'd say like three or so minutes. Go ahead and take a walk to the restroom, grab some coffee, whatever you need. This is also a really great time to submit your questions via the Q&A box. So that's just down below. Please submit your questions, whatever questions you might have for our panel. And we'll be back, I would say, at around 11:18, 19 or so to go ahead and start that Q&A session. And we're excited to join you all again in a bit.
Okay, are we back, Rocio?
Hello, yes, we'll just give everyone one more minute to submit any questions you might have using that Q&A box below. And just so you all know, the chat is back on and enabled. So if you have any comments for our speakers or just want to chat with each other, you're more than welcome to use that chat box. But we'll give you just one more minute to submit any questions you might have. Loving the enthusiasm, Jarima.
We're excited too.
Yeah, Jarima has been really great for Network 13. She's already collaborating with schools in Pullman, as well as she's provided lots of resources for our Network 13 teachers from Burst Into Books, and has also participated in our parent workshop. So that we are really excited about deepening that partnership with Burst Into Books next year, especially as they're developing their office in the Roseland community. So thank you again, Jarima.
And Jarima did post a question too of, she says, talking to and working with parents is so crucial. As I work with the CLA to interview parents in Altgeld Garden and Riverdale, how can I best connect with parents you work with? So who wants to answer that? Dr. Cleveland?
I'll start only because they sent me the flyer, I do believe, already. So it's been distributed to the CPS schools. We use technology such as like Class Dojo to communicate to parents. There's parent newsletters that has went out with the actual flyer and how to get in contact. So that was the start. And then youth guidance do have some parents that they typically have a text database with that they contact with at all three schools. So the flyer has already started being generated.
Fantastic.
Parents took a
and so if other organizations in our network have an opportunity they want to communicate to your families, they should reach out to you. What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I'm a good source. I always get approved by principal. We don't just put anything.
Can't just go willy-nilly.
Yeah, we have a system. But if certain principals, depending upon what it is, they know I'm not putting anything in there that is
you screen it.
Not for their parents or anything. I could screen it. But this has definitely went out. And I have shared it with Lloyd Bond. That is the charter school in Riverdale. They're not always readily receiving information, but because Aldridge has a community in schools grant, I communicate with everybody. So anything I typically learn about, I try to get them involved. So you definitely may want to connect with Lloyd Bond Charter School.
That's super helpful. And I have a kind of follow-up question to make sure that we get at. And I know that Deputy Stewart, we talked a little bit about this. I want to make sure that we spend a little bit of time talking about parent engagement. I know that's been a big topic of today, and you've had some ideas around, building some new models for parent engagement. Do you want to share any of that with us?
Yeah, I think it would be great to have a parent leadership group in terms of like a parent mentor group. In my former role as a principal on the Northwest side, we worked with the organization to have the parent mentors that were selected by the school. We provided a stipend of $1,500 for the school year, which is with the Moving Forward Together money, it presents an opportunity for us to celebrate parents in that way. So parents worked in classrooms to support students 2 hours a day, 4 days a week. And then Fridays, they engage in professional learning, either led by a teacher or another partner organization, like Metropolitan or Youth Guidance or any organization that can support development to help build their capacity. But what I saw in that process is that it's parents supporting one another. They're supporting the schools, like you're building the parents' sense of community in terms of how they're connected in a way. But I also saw the benefits from the student, because those children who saw their parents that were involved and what that did for their emotional development and their academic progress was invaluable. So I would suggest, rather than just simply saying, if you come to a meeting, you could win a gift card. Again, teaching a person to fish is far better than just giving it out, fried fish. So, how can we build the capacity and start with who we have and move from there? And then also thinking about how can we partner with the teachers more? The teachers are the gateways to the parents and the family. So if you partner with a classroom teacher or a teacher leader at Algill, Carver, or Du Bois, and you work on the project, then you have that buy-in with the parents, because they are the ones that could get the parents. So I would definitely suggest, doing that. That's who, how I built relationships as a former teacher. And it's about trust. So they may not know you as an organization or as individuals, or even as a network, deputy, but they know the teacher. They trust the teacher. And in many cases, all three principals, they trust the principals. They know the principals. So find yourself at a ILT meeting or a teacher meeting. Today we're having a teacher focus group because I need to know from the teachers what's challenging you, what are you proud of, but how can we best support you? So I need to hear from them specifically. No, harm or anything like that. So that's something that I think would be critical. Talk to the principals of all three schools and see if you can get on the next PAC agenda, the next LSC agenda, just for public comments or just to present, because many of our LSC and who are the parent leaders of each of the schools, they're not even aware. Mm-hmm. So how can we start with educating them and then using them as the gateway to other parents? And so incentivize parents who get parents. Let's do that. How can that benefit me if I bring more followers in to support our school? And then the other thing is, we have to share the results. Nobody wants to come to a meeting for meeting's sake. They want to see, how is this actually making things better? So if you have written a grant or proposal, that's great. But if I don't see that it's changing the quality of my life today, tomorrow, I'm not coming to any more meetings. So we have to have some small successes that people can see right away. So if June the 5th, we expected 50 and we got 500, how are we sharing that? And I think that would be the way that we start this movement.
Yes, and there's a few more questions that have come in. We do have a two-part question, but I think I can sum it up as this kind of follow-up to parent engagement, which is, and Dr. Sorsby, I think you started touching on this, which is what is the literacy level of parents in the community? And I think we already touched that that's oftentimes lower as well, which is why there isn't a culture of reading in the homes and schools. But is there anything more to speak on about, we have a lot of members in our network who focus on adult literacy and how we can bring them to the table to work on parent literacy or adult literacy in the community.
No, but I think that if I have those resources that I can give to parents, I think that'd be awesome. Just so that I can start that conversation from they bring their children in for their exams, to start that conversation about, you know, their comfort around reading in the home, and then to let them know what resources are available to them to, you know, to bring literacy into the home. I think that would be a great opportunity.
Oh yeah, that would be a great opportunity. Is almost like a little screener with resources that they could tap into. That's fantastic. That we also have a question about how might qualified CPS vendors whose work pertain to teacher development support Network 13 and the Riverdale community.
Make sure that your work with teachers includes a parent component. There's no way a teacher is going to be able to impact the child doing it in isolation. But teachers didn't go to school to be trained for that. Full disclosure, that's not a part of the university course curriculum, but it's a need, especially now that kids are in the home with the parent who was the first teacher, right? So if you can incorporate any support or planning or offer any suggestions to teachers to help them brainstorm how they could engage parents more, either virtually or in person, I think that would be really, really helpful.
That's great. Dr. Cleveland or Susanna, do you have any thoughts around either that parent component, especially like Susanna, you know, I know you're focused on early childhood education, but your work in Alt Gardens in terms of like parent literacy levels and activities that could engage them as well?
I did just want to mention, and I know Carrie Pulley from Metropolitan Family Services is on the call, you know, getting back to what Dr. Cleveland was saying earlier about, there was talk about GED programming and literacy for parents. Metropolitan Family Services is one of the key social service providers in the community, and key because they have a staff of family coaches that work with Alt-Geld families. So they, I mean, you know, I know they know about all kinds of resources already, and they're doing, I mean, Carrie could give you a laundry list of the stuff that they're doing, but I just wanted to say that out loud so that that connection could be made, because they are directly touching Alt-Geld families.
That's super helpful. Thank you.
I saw this idea in the chat there for parents to drop off their kids and stay for classes. Because of the pandemic, we weren't able to do that the way we normally could encourage, especially in early childhood. But I think this poses a great opportunity. So, you know, could it be a thing where we have parents spend the first 5 minutes as they're dropping children off, maybe reading some words on the way into the building, or, you know, how can they, you know, what are some things they could say to their children as they're sending them off to school? Or could we have some benches outside the school, like a reading bench next with Nancy's library, the little library, where a parent can stop there, read to their child for a few minutes, give them a hug and a kiss, and send them into the building. And that we photograph that, like you take a selfie of you reading to your child, and let that go viral, you know, and see how we can actually spread that in the community.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This action group is going to be on fire. Rocio, do you want to transition us? I think this is a good point for us to go to the next phase to get some idea of where our viewers are.
Yeah, so we're gonna take a quick moment to do a poll. Like Annie said, it's really helpful for us just to get a better gauge on how you're all engaging with the session, as well as what we can expect in terms of, you know, collaboration and your interest in collaborating with this neighborhood. So I am going to launch this poll, and I'm going to wait until we have at least 80 or 90% of responses before we move on. So the faster you respond, the faster we move on. And then I'll share the results of that poll as well.
They're coming in.
Climbing fast. Oh, you're all doing so great today.
Keep going.
We are at 74%. Let's wait on like 2 or 3 more. And then we'll move on. We stalled at 23.
There we go. Close to 80.
And this always feels, I feel like we're like game show hosts when we do this poll thing.
Yeah.
All right, we are at 80. I'll count down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end that, and I will share the results. Very positive. All right, so most people feel that it's relevant, and it looks like we have 100%. We have 26 people say they see potential and opportunities for new collaborations as a result of this confab. So looking
Very good start.
To, again, a reminder, you need to fill out that survey when you exit this screen. You'll be prompted to fill out the survey. That is how you will express your interest to us in terms of your wanting to collaborate for the action group. So definitely fill that out. I'm going to stop sharing this. And we are going to get ready. We just did the poll. We're going to get ready to move on to some closing statements from our executive director, Ken Bigger. But before that, we'll say this again at the end, but it's always great to say it multiple times because we are so thankful for our panelists today and all that they have shared. You all, like I said at the beginning of the session, are just such incredible community champions. You know, we've done a few of these sessions now, and I am just so blown away by your energy and just your intentionality in the Riverdale area and how committed you are to the success of the community and to the growth of the community. And that's just so clear through all of your coalition building and collaborative efforts. So just thank you for taking so much time today to share, you know, some of your wisdom, some of your insight. I think, you know, we're all very excited to move forward with some of this literacy equity initiative work with Riverdale, and excited to build some new partnerships. Hopefully this is a start of a long journey in our partnership building with CLA and the Riverdale area. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic over to Ken Bigger, who's going to just help us tie it all together now that we've, you know, gone through the panel before closing the session. So Ken, mic's on you.
Thanks so much, Mauricio. I always appreciate the level setting, expectation setting of this. But no, I want to echo the thanks that you just offered to our panelists today. Lolita Cleveland, Chandia Sorsby, Susanna Levine, and Stacy Stewart. Thank you so much. And also the importance of starting to forge some lasting collaborations. It always feels a little awkward for me to kind of come in from off screen. I sort of feel like I'm the you know, Charlie sudden appearing at the end of the show. But I did have a few thoughts that this conversation sparked for me. And it's always really inspiring to learn from people in the community about things that are you know, compelling with regard to literacy access and addressing the opportunity gap. I will acknowledge that when I think about Riverdale and Altgeld Gardens specifically and literacy, I think of a story that was told by a former lawyer and community organizer who worked really closely with Cheryl Johnson's mother, Hazel Johnson, on some environmental racism challenges. And this community organizer also happened to be an amateur short story writer, and he wound up writing something a little bit later about the importance of being a short story writer, not just a reader, with regard to the community organizing work. And I just want to read a quick passage from this. because I think it's relevant to what we're doing here today. Talking about the experience of short story writing, the organizer says, the great thing was that it was useful in my organizing work. The short story writing was, that is. Because when I got there, the guy who had hired me said that the thing that brings people together to have the courage to take action on behalf of their lives is not just that they care about the same issue, it's that they have shared stories. And he told me that if you learn how to listen to people's stories and can find what's sacred in other people's stories, then you'll be able to forge a relationship that lasts. And that's really, I think, one of the reasons why we're doing this work in the confabs and working very closely with community members. And I know that Jerema is really eager to dig in on that, and is one of many of our member organizations, former, current, and future member organizations that I think have work that is so highly relevant to this work. And I appreciated the focus on the importance of family literacy here. I know that I learned from Katie's boss at Literacy Works, the statistic from a National Institute of Health study not too long ago, that the single biggest indicator of a child's educational prospects is the literacy level of their parents. And so if we are not taking an intergenerational approach, we are leaving proverbial money on the table when it comes to driving greater access to literacy. I think the range of community issues that got identified here, including the kind of the segmentation of the community, the toxic donut effect in the Altgeld Gardens and the Riverdale community, all speaks to the need for us to work proactively to avoid the kind of parachuting in that was mentioned early on, and to develop those sort of lasting relationships. I am indeed daunted by the number of bus stops, between the community there and the southern end of the Red Line. So again, I think this was hugely helpful for me, and I hope helpful for everybody else who was tuning in today. I see a lot of opportunity to connect in future projects and look forward to building these partnerships. So again, thank you all for participating, and thank you all for attending. I look forward to what's next.
Thank you for bringing that all together for us, Ken. I just want to remind you all to save the date for next month's confab, which is happening on July 21st. That's going to be Gage Park, which is also one of our literacy equity initiatives, selected neighborhood. So that's going to be a hugely important neighborhood to focus on in the coming year. So definitely invite you to come out to that to figure out how you might be able to plug in and collaborate. One of our team members will drop the link to register in the chat. You'll also receive this registration link in our follow-up email from this session. But again, we'll give you back 20 minutes of your day today. Thank you so much for joining us. And a big thank you again to all of our fantastic presenters and panelists. I hope you enjoyed your time with us and getting to know us a bit better more. But everyone have a wonderful rainy afternoon. We'll see you soon.